when Flint Dibble went on the Danny Jones show.
Oh, yeah.
And his explanation for how these were hollowed out was that you had a stick, and you would take a rock, and you would put the rock and attach it to the stick, and then just twist it with your hands like that. There's a meme of him twisting.
Might even work if you had 10,000 years to do it, you know. But to make it to do that within a human lifetime, I'm afraid that's not a satisfactory explanation at all. I mean, look at this. This is diorite, right?
It is.
Incredibly hard stone.
Yeah.
Look at the perfection with which it is made, and then look inside. This bit is actually, you can go inside. It's hollowed out inside with perfect regularity.
Yeah.
And how that was done with twirling a stick beats me, and it beats anybody who's seriously looked at these objects. Again, we're dealing with some kind of technology that we do not understand. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was a very high-tech, machine-age technology, but it means that we're looking at the end results of a process that we cannot replicate and that we have not got to grips with yet. And that is fascinating. It's not a subject that I've followed up in recent years, partly because I've been out of Egypt for quite a while. I will be spending a lot more time in Egypt in the coming year. But I've been traveling elsewhere and exploring other mysteries. But I first became interested in these vases in Egypt way back in 1992 or 1993 when I was first researching fingerprints of the gods. That's the time I met Chris Dunn. Have you had Chris on your show?
I'm a good friend. Yeah, he was my second guest, actually.
Yeah, and Chris speaks authoritatively about this evidence of some kind of ancient technology that we see in these. And I was looking at vases in what was then the Cairo Museum, which have very narrow necks and then open out into this large base. And again, how that was done with the technology that is attributed to the ancient Egyptians, I just can't get it, and nor can Chris, and nor can anybody else who looks at this seriously. Chris is also focused on the so-called bull sarcophagi in the Saqqara, in just a bit south of Giza. And again, carved out of diorite, huge things, very, very precise in every dimension. So I do think we are holding evidence of a lost technology that we don't understand, and that we try to explain away with easy solutions to what is in fact a very complicated, very difficult problem. Yes, I wasn't joking when I said if you had your stick and your stone on the end of it, maybe in 10,000 years you could do this.
Maybe.
But the idea of somebody sitting there for 10,000 years, since our lifespan tends to be 70 or 80 or 90 years, is most improbable.
Yeah. But if you see the CT scans on these, and you see the wall thickness that's just equal on one side to the other, to anywhere that you would pick on the same latitude, it's equal. It just doesn't. You just can't get there with primitive hand tools. And
you can't.
We're missing something.
Yeah, we're definitely missing something, and that's what drives me. It's that sense of curiosity about the past. It's the ancient knowledge of astronomy. It's the ancient knowledge of longitude. It's the ancient exploration of the world, which is not accounted for in the mainstream archaeological narrative. These are the curiosities that draw me, that trigger my curiosity and make me want to understand the past better. And when I start doing that, I include amongst them the anomalies of these stone vases, and the evidence is becoming more and more clear that we have a real anomaly here, something that is not explained by archaeologists, and when they try to explain it, they do so in ridiculous ways, which actually ultimately are going to be very harmful to archaeology, because anybody with half a brain can see that this is not the result of a twirling stick.
Right. Yeah. I think the world is kind of interested to know. I'm certainly very interested to know your thoughts on a couple of things that maybe you don't talk about all that often. One is this concept of the magnetic poles and the potential for a magnetic pole excursion or flip or reversal. What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's happened before.
Yeah.
It can happen again.
I guess I mean soon.
Yeah. I may not be remembering correctly because I've not been focused on this issue for a long time, but I do think the last magnetic pole flip was around about 12,000 years ago, somewhere of that. Or I may be wrong about that.
It's deeper. It's deeper. Yeah, there was an excursion 42,000, and then there was a flip. I want to say 700,000.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're several
So we may
hundred
be
thousand years overdue.
Several 100,000 years overdue for a magnetic pole flip.
Correct.
Well, we have to ask ourselves, where does the magnetism of the Earth come from? You know, and to what extent is it connected to the rotation of the Earth? Could a magnetic pole flip destabilize the Earth itself? Could it be the result of a destabilization of the Earth? We don't know this yet. It's not, as I say, it's not a matter that I've investigated particularly closely. Perhaps I should. Perhaps I should look into it in more depth in the future. I mean, as anybody who uses a compass knows, magnetic north, even now, is not the same as true north. Right. It's about 11 degrees off true astronomical north.
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting one. I know there's a handful of different people out there that are talking about this, and there's one who's very alarmist and very nervous. I wouldn't say nervous. He's not a fearful person, but he thinks that it's very much imminent.
Right.
And the North Magnetic Pole is hauling ass right now for sure. It's moving right across. It's an interesting conversation.
Is there any evidence that those earlier magnetic pole flips were accompanied by some kind of geographical polar wandering?
That's a question I'm not completely sure of. Yeah.
We both need to dig into this further.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's a great, interesting topic.
It
for
certainly
sure.
is. It certainly is.
What about the moon? Your thoughts on the moon?
Well, I know. Again, I'm handing my critics yet another stick to beat me with. But I have become aware of a cycle in my body that correlates with the cycles of the moon. And you know, perhaps this isn't so surprising because we know that the female menstrual cycle is often coordinates with the moon in some ways. In my case, it's migraines. I get into peak migraine episodes in the days just before a full moon, and they ease off after the full moon. And I fully recognize this could be a correlation without any direct causative factor at all. It may not be that the moon is giving me migraines. It may be my body is giving me migraines, and my cycle is somehow correlated to the cycle of the moon. But I'm open to the idea it could be causative as well. But I know it's there. I know it's a real thing. I know that ancient cultures paid great attention to the moon. One of the areas that we were able to film in North America was Chaco Canyon. And in Chaco Canyon, you have, of course, all of the standard alignments that you find everywhere in the world to the summer solstice, the winter solstice, the equinox sunrises and sunsets. But you also have alignments to lunar events, particularly the 18.6 cycle, which is the northern and southern standstill of the moon. It's quite an observational feat to pick that up. And there are alignments in Chaco that target that as well. So they were very interested in the moon. The moon does not rise in the same place through the course of a year, and it does not rise in the same place through a course of, this cycle is 18.6 years long. And yet there it is expressed magnificently in the architecture of Chaco Canyon.
So what can you tell us about Ancient Apocalypse 3, a potential for where that might be, or should we keep that?
Well, I just can't say whether that will happen or not. The decision making in the commissioning process in Netflix is not under my control. Netflix absolutely independent and makes up its own mind on what it does. And I'm very glad that they gave us a season 2. And perhaps that was because season 1 was so successful, and viewers all over the world watched that show, and it was one of the most successful documentary series that Netflix has ever made. And perhaps that was why season 2 got commissioned. I don't know whether season 3 is going to be commissioned or not. It might be that Netflix will wash their hands of the matter at this point and just leave us with 2 seasons. Or they might decide to continue. I hope they decide to continue. But I don't know that at the moment. If there is an option for a season 3, I'd like to focus it on Egypt. But that, again, would be in discussion with Netflix as to where they would like to go next. There's many other issues, mysteries in the past that I would like to explore around the world. But I regard myself as blessed and fortunate to have had the opportunity to reach a worldwide audience through the Netflix platform. And I'm grateful for the 2 seasons that I've had. And I hope I get a 3rd season. And I hope I can make it in Egypt. But that's entirely in the hands of Netflix, and I won't know for some time.
Got to assume if you got a second season, you're going to get a third season. There was so much pushback and nonsense, after that first season, and this one it's hard to really argue or think about too much, that's super controversial that you've said. You're just bringing up really incredible and logical questions about human history.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, but as I say, it's not under my control.
Yeah, fair.